بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. Alhamdulillah, we begin by praising Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and we will continue from where we stopped in our last lesson in Fathul Qareeb. So basically, we have come into the part where the author speaks about the types of water. And he mentioned there are 4 types of water. Last week we spoke about the meaning of al-mutlaq. So when we say water that is mutlaq, meaning it is not any binded by anything. And then we also spoke about the difference between mutlaq that is lazim and mutlaq that is not lazim. Or the author used the word al-munfak. So we gave the example of seawater and water that comes from the river. When you remove the water from the sea, or you remove the water from the river, now the association now changes. But when it comes to coffee that we put in water, it will always be coffee. So these are the difference between changes that you cannot separate from the water and changes that can be separated. So this is basically the definition of mutlaq. It is water that is not binded by anything, but this binding is only pertaining to a binding that is lazim. Because seawater, we mentioned that seawater is considered to be mutlaq. Despite the properties of seawater is known, it is still considered to be mutlaq based on the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ. So we still binded it with the sea, but this binding is not something that is continuous. So these are some of the things that we mentioned in our last lesson. So we have come into the part where the author is speaking about the second type of water, that is tahirun fi nafsihi mutahhirun li ghayrihi makruhun isti'maluhu. I believe all this also we have mentioned. Sometimes water tahirun fi nafsihi mutahhirun li ghayrihi, but makruhun isti'maluhu. It is pure in itself and it can purify others, but it is makruh to use it. And this is the example of al-mushammas. Al-mushammas. And the conditions of al-mushammas also it is mentioned by the author. So now I think we straight away will enter into the part where we stop. We spoke about the conditions of mushammas, that it has to be in a hot weather, and it must be in a container that is metallic, and so on and so forth. Okay, can I have anyone volunteer to read from where we stop? Can someone volunteer? We will enter into our qismus thalith. So we are entering into the third part of the types of water. Before that, the author spoke about the opinion of Imam Nawawi. He said, وَاخْتَارَ النَّوَوِيُّ عَدَمَ الْكَرَاهَةِ مُطْلَقًا. Imam Nawawi do not view that mushammas is makruh, because it is not established that it can cause harm. So he is of the opinion that it is permissible, that it is not makruh. And then lastly, the author mentioned وَيُكْرَهُ أَيْضًا شَدِيدُ السُّخُونَةِ وَالْبُرُودَةِ. And if water is too hot, too cold, that can cause harm, it is makruh. Right, so now we have then entered into the part where you say وَالْقِسْمُ الثَّالِثِ. Can somebody read? تفضل. Okay. So now the author is saying, وَالْقِسْمُ الثَّالِث, yani the third category, طَاهِرٌ فِي نَفْسِهِ غَيْرُ مُطَهِّرٍ لِغَيْرِهِ. So it is pure in itself, طَاهِرٌ فِي نَفْسِهِ غَيْرُ مُطَهِّرٍ لِغَيْرِهِ, but it cannot purify others. And this is al-ma al-musta'mal. So we have a term that is called al-ma al-musta'mal. So ma al-musta'mal, the simple definition, and it will be طاهر في نفسه غير مطهر لغيره, that it is pure in itself, but it cannot purify others. The word any musta'mal, and it comes in from the word ista'mala. Ista'mala meaning to use. So musta'mal meaning something that is used. This is ismul maf'ul. Ista'mala yasta'milu isti'malan. Musta'milun musta'malun. So musta'mal, and meaning in the Arabic language, and it means something that is used. So when you say al-ma'ul musta'mal, meaning this water has been used. But in the Islamic terminology, it is not necessary that every water that has been used carry the ruling of musta'mal. Not necessary. Because we also have to take into consideration what is it that it is being used for. So here the author explained. He said, في رفع حدث أو إزالة نجس إن لم يتغير. So number one, if the water is used في رفع حدث, yani to lift an impurity, whether we are speaking about minor impurity or major impurity. So water that is used to lift an impurity carries the ruling of musta'mal. So you cannot use this water for purification, but it is tahirun fi nafsi. It is clean, it is pure in itself, meaning it is not najis, but you cannot use it any for purification, any of other things. So if water has been used to lift an impurity, so an example will be, if a person takes any wudu, if a person takes any ablution, and then what you call it, the remains of the ablution, we say it is considered to be musta'mal. We just hold on. So for example, if a person has a pail of water, if a person has a pail of water, and he takes any wudu, when he takes any wudu, before that, you can send the link to those who are following, who are not any from this class. Some of them following this lesson. So if you happen to know them, you can forward them the link. So if a person has a pail of water, and then he takes any ablution from the pail of water, and then the water falls back into the pail. So now we say the water has been used to lift an impurity. What is the meaning? Now if I take any water and I wash my face with the intention to lift hadath al-asghar, so the water then falls apart from my face, this is musta'mal. Clear, inshallah. Why it is musta'mal? Because it has parted in my face, and this water is intended to lift an impurity. So once it imparted from my face, then only it becomes musta'mal. But if the water is still on the face, this is not considered to be musta'mal. So when does it becomes musta'mal? After it has been parted from the body part. So this is raf'u hadath, water that has been used to lift an impurity. Likewise, if a person bathing, the janaba, and a person, for example, he has a small portion of water, and he submerge himself inside any the water with the intention of janaba, to bathe any the janaba bath. So now any the water becomes musta'mal. Why any musta'mal? Because it has been used to leave a major impurity. Likewise, if you use any water that is little to take any ablution, so water that is parted any from our body parts is considered to be musta'mal. So this is any the first part. Water that has been used any to leave any impurity, whether we are speaking about minor impurity or major impurity. Number two, it is used any to remove najis. It is used any to remove najasa. So this is also can be musta'mal. Some of you might be thinking, water that is used any to remove any najis, this is mutanajis. How come it is? The author says any here musta'mal. Can you see it? What did the author say? He said, وَهُوَ الْمَاءُ الْمُسْتَعْمَلُ فِي رَفْعِ حَدَثٍ أَوْ إِزَالَةِ نَجِسٍ إِنْ لَمْ يَتَغَيَّرْ. So how can any water that is used to remove a filth still be considered any to be musta'mal? How does any water that has been used to remove any filth still can be considered any to be musta'mal? So there is a situation here that the author is referring to. What is the situation? The situation is if the filth is minor filth, meaning a small portion in your filth, and then a person pours any water from on top. This is the situation of al-ghusala, hukmul ghusala. So ghusala, if when we pour any water from on top, the water falls on the filth. The water falls on the filth. So what happens when the water falls on the filth? Now the remaining water that comes out of it can become pure. How do we ascertain that it is pure? We look at the properties of the water. If there are no traces of filth, in terms of the smell, in terms of the taste, in terms of the color, we say this is tahirun. This is pure water. But it cannot purify. It takes the ruling of musta'mal. But what is the condition? The condition the author is saying, وَإِن لَمْ يَتَغَيَّرْ. If there are no changes to the water after it is used to wash the filth. But this is in a situation where the water is made to fall on the filth. So our scholars mentioned how come it makes the water musta'mal and not mutanajis, because of the strength of the water. Because of the strength of the water. That is why the water takes the ruling of musta'mal, and it does not take the ruling of mutanajis. So the condition, the most important condition is that the properties of the water does not change. But if the properties of the water change, any of the properties of the water change, then it is mutanajis and it is not any musta'mal. And all these things we are speaking about water that is less than 2 qullah. All these things we are speaking about water that is less than 2 qullah. Whenever we speak about musta'mal, we are referring to water that is less than 2 qullah. In our mazhab Imam Shafi'i, anything that is less than 2 qullah, that is about 220 liters, is considered to be al-ma'ul qalil. It is considered to be water that is little. Anything that is below 2 qullah is considered to be little. Anything that is more than 2 qullah is considered to be kathir, a lot. So when it comes to musta'mal, we are only speaking about water that is little and not water that is a lot. Because water that is a lot, it carries a different ruling. So when it comes to water that is musta'mal, that is used, water that is used to wash away filth, it can take the ruling of musta'mal, and that is the case of al-ghusala. I hope it is clear, inshallah. Is there any questions from anyone? Is there anyone who doesn't understand? This is called al-ghusala. Even in Muqaddimah Haramiyah also it is mentioned. In Muqaddimah Haramiyah also it is mentioned. So this is what the author is saying. في رفع حدث أو إزالة نجس إن لم يتغير. If there are no changes any to the remnants any of the water. And then the author any mentioned something else. وَلَمْ يَزِدْ وَزْنُهُ بَعْدَ إِنْفِصَالِهِ عَمَّا كَانَ بَعْدَ اعْتِبَارِ مَا يَتَشَرَّبُهُ الْمَغْسُولُ مِنَ الْمَاءِ. What is the meaning? Now any the author any is saying. Point number one, and he said, Lam yataghayyar. The water does not change any in its properties. So now any we have any water that is poured any on a field. And it does not any cause any changes in the properties any of the water that is used any to wash. Point number one. Number two, the weight any of the water does not any increase. If the weight any of the water any increase, then we say this is not musta'mal, this is mutanajis, because the increment is a clear indication that it is increment any based any on the field. So if, for example, if I use 1 kilogram any of water to wash my shirt, and then after that I recollect any the water again, after any I wash it, it is 1 kilograms and 10 grams. So there is the other. So we say that this increment, it comes in from the field by conviction. So in this situation, we say the water is mutanajjis and not musta'mal. So the condition and it must be that the weight any of the water must be the same. If I use any 1 kilo any of water to wash my shirt, there is a urine in it, for example. There is a urine in it. And the weight any of the water any is still any 1 kilo any after washing. Now it shows any there is no changes any in the weight. There is no changes any in the weight. So now we say any that the field any has been purified any by the strength any of the water that is been poured on it. To such an extent and it diminishes. Then only any we say it carries any the ruling any musta'mal. It does not any carry the ruling of mutanajjis. Is everyone clear, inshallah? Is there any questions any so far? This is where the author mentioned, إِن لَمْ يَتَغَيَّرْ وَلَمْ يَزِدْ وَزْنُهُ. Wasn't here meaning weight, huh? بَعْدَ إِنْفِصَالِهِ. بَعْدَ إِنْفِصَالِهِ. Yani after the field and it has been washed away by the water. عَمَّا كَانَ بَعْدَ اعْتِبَارِ مَا يَتَشَرَّبُهُ الْمَغْسُولُ مِنَ الْمَاءِ. After yani we have washed the thing with water. That's what we mentioned. What is the meaning? As long as the field any is at the place any of washing, it is not enough yet. We must any make sure that the thing that has been washed is now free any from filth. So now any is the time any that we look any at the remnants any of the water. But if the filth any is still present, then we do not give any ruling yet. When does any the ruling comes? The ruling comes any after you have washed everything. Now there is no more filth any at the thing any that is washed. Okay? That is why what you call it, the author is saying that once any everything any has been washed any then the ruling any comes. Is it clear, inshallah? Is there any questions? No question? If there is no question, then we continue. Okay, now any the author is saying, والمتغير أي ومن هذا القسم الماء المتغير. So now any daughter and he's saying water that is musta'mal, there are two types. Any tahirun fi nafsihi ghayru mutahirun fi ghayrihi, there are two types. Number one is water that has been used to lift hadath, and number two, water that has been used to lift filth, to wash away filth. That's what we mentioned, the issue of ghusala, with the condition that has been mentioned. The second type of water that is musta'mal is water al-mutaghayyir, water that has been changed in its properties. So basically, and he is saying that water whose properties have changed takes the ruling of musta'mal. It takes the ruling of musta'mal. So for example, if I have any pure water, and I put something in pure water, I put for example coffee. So once I put in the coffee, what happens? The properties of the water will change. The color will become black. The taste will differ. So this is al-ma al-mutaghayyir. Water that has been changed. What has been changed? Sifat. The characteristics of the water has been changed. So when the characteristics of the water has been changed to such an extent that you cannot call it water anymore, so now we have removed the term water from it. Now it becomes coffee water. It's binded. So now it becomes tahirun ghayru mutahhir. It becomes pure, but it cannot purify. Why it cannot purify? Because the changes takes place. And when the changes takes place, it no longer becomes mutlaq. So the author mentioned that the term mutlaq has been taken away, because now it is binded by something else. And it is mixed with something that is pure. So we say it is still tahirun fi nafsi ghayru mutahhir li nafsi li ghayrihi. So now it becomes the same ruling as musta'mal. It is going to be the same as water that has been used for wudu. If a person recollect in his ablution, now this is musta'mal. Now this ruling is the same as water whose properties have changed with something that is pure. Clear, inshallah? So this is where the author is saying, wal mutaghayyiru, he said, وَمِنْ هَذَا الْقِسْمِ الْمَاءُ الْمُتَغَيِّرُ أَحَدُ أَوْصَافِهِ, one of his properties. بِمَا أَيْ بِشَيْءٍ خَالَطَهُ مِنَ الطَّاهِرَاتِ. So the condition here is that the thing that is mixed with the water is the thing that is pure, like coffee, sugar, salt, syrup, juice. So these are pure things. So if it mixes with water, it changes the properties of the water is still pure, but it cannot purify. تَغَيُّرًا يَمْنَعُ إِطْلَاقَ إِسْمِ الْمَاءِ عَلَيْهِ. So the change is something that removes the purity of the water. It removes the definition of water. It removes the definition of water. It makes the water binded. It makes the water binded. So for example, if I have this bottle, if I put a bit powder of coffee, it will not give any effect. The water will still be water. But the moment I put 1 spoon in this bottle, what happens? 1 spoon will change the properties of the water. So now after putting 1 spoon of coffee, so now I say that this is not water anymore, but this is coffee. So now I have removed the term water from this water, and it is binded by something else. So this is where the author is saying, تَغَيُّرًا يَمْنَعُ إِطْلَاقَ إِسْمِ الْمَاءِ عَلَيْهِ. So I have removed the term water from this water by adding something that changes its properties. So now it becomes not water anymore, because we have removed the term water from it. It's not mutlaq anymore. It is muqayyad. It is binded. فَإِنَّهُ طَاهِرٌ غَيْرُ طَهُورٌ. The author mentioned it is tahir غَيْرُ طَهُور. We have the word tahur, tahur, meaning something that is pure and can purify. And this is a Quranic term. In the Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentioned, وَأَنزَلْنَا مِنَ السَّمَاءِ مَاءً طَهُورًا. When Allah speaks about rain, Allah mentioned rain and it's tahur, meaning something that is pure and can purify. Then the author mentioned hissiyan kana tarayyuhu aw taqdiriyan. Now this is another thing, and for those any of you who have studied in Muqaddimah Hadramiyah, the author in Muqaddimah Hadramiyah wrote extensively about this. Because when you speak about changes of the properties of water, sometimes these changes can be physical changes, sometimes it can be an estimated changes. Physical change you can see with your eyes and in the properties. For example, when I look at this water, I say this is pure water. Ma'al mutlaq. I don't see any properties change here. It's pure water. When I add any coffee into it, it becomes black in color. So now I can see the physical characteristics change, the color. From pure water is colorless, now it becomes black and in color. But what is the meaning of taqdiri? Changes that is based on estimation. The example will be, in Muqaddimah Hadramiyah, the author gave the example of what? Rose water that has no smell and no taste. If I were to put one spoon of rose water that has no taste and no color into this water, so what happens? I don't see any change. There is no physical change. But can I use any of the water for wudu? Do I say this is any mutlaq? Even though there is no change, even though there is no physical any change, do I say that this is any mutlaq, or I say that this water cannot be used for purification? So now I have to use any estimation. So now the estimation is in a way that if 1 spoon of rose water that is colorless and no smell and no taste were to be placed inside this bottle of water, now I have to make an estimation. If the rose water has smell and color, can it change any of the properties of the water? Can it change any of the properties of the water? If the answer is yes, then based on our estimation, this water is no more mutlaq. I cannot use this water for purification, because if I were to estimate the properties of the thing that is placed in water, it can cause a change in the properties, then it is not permissible for me to use any of the water. And this is based on estimation and not based on a physical assumption. Clear, inshallah? Is there any questions so far? Everything clear? Okay. Let me see. Now we go back into the book, and he said, فَإِنَّهُ طَاهِرٌ غَيْرُ طَهُورٍ. Now he's speaking about musta'mal. So musta'mal goes back to 2 things. Number 1, either we say musta'mal, water that has been used for lifting impurity, or washing away filth with the conditions that we mentioned. The second thing is water that has been changed in its properties with something that is pure. So it is tahirun ghayru tahur. It is pure, but it cannot purify. Hissiyan kana tarayyuru aw taqdiriyan. Whether it is a physical form of change or an estimated form of change. So estimated form of change, we give the example of rose water that has no color and no smell. Refer to Muqaddimah Hadramiyah and you can see this example mentioned there. كأن اختلط بالماء ما يوافقه في صفاته. This is exactly also what he mentioned here. كماء الورد المنقطع رائحة. So he given an example in here of rose water. Rose water that has no smell and it has no color. So now if, for example, if this is any rose water, you cannot know this is rose water. You thought this is a water. Because why? Because in terms of the color, there's no color. In terms of the smell, there is no smell. In terms of the taste, there is no taste. But this rose water, can you take any wudu any rose water? No, you can't. Even though it looks like any water. And if you mix this rose water to another cup of water, it becomes it takes a ruling of musta'mal, because you cannot use it for purification. You cannot use it any for purification. Because why? Because this is an estimation that it can cause any change. So in Muqaddimah Ramiyah, the author speaks about awsatis sifat and ashadis sifat. So when it comes to musta'mal, he uses the term, this estimation, and it's based on awsatus sifat, yani the medium characteristics. So when it comes to musta'mal, when it comes to pure substances, we do not go into the extreme of using examples that are strong in its properties, but we use examples that are medium. So he said, كأن اختلط بالماء ما يوافقه في صفاته. يعني a person mixes something that is like any water. ما يوافق الماء في صفاته. كماء الورد المنقطع رائحة. Rose water that do not have any smell. والماء المستعمل. فإن لم يمنع إطلاق اسم الماء عليه بأن كان تغيره بالطاهر يسيرا أو بما يوافق الماء في صفاته وقدر مخالفا ولم يغيره فلا يسلب طهوريته فهو مطهر لغيره. This is basically exactly what I mentioned earlier. If I were to mix something that is a rose water that has no smell and no taste, that is yuwafiq al-ma, like any water, if I were to mix it, then I do taqdir, estimation. And based on this taqdir, as long as an estimation that is medium, in a way that if you were to assume that vinegar is poured by that amount, can it cause any change? Can it remove the purity of the water, in a sense, and if we say this is no more any ma'ul mutlaq, yani yaslab tahuriyatahu, can it removes the tahuriyah, that it is not any mutlaq anymore, if I were to make this estimation, or we say this is minimal, that it cannot cause any serious changes. If it can cause any changes that can remove the term water from this water, then we say that this is musta'mal. This carry the ruling of musta'mal. But if it is not, then we say it is still pure. And this is based on estimation. Okay? Clear, inshallah? Is there any question so far? No questions? Everything good? Okay. If everything is good, we will continue. Okay, now the author is saying, وَاحْتَرَزَ بِقَوْلِهِ خَالَتَهُ. Yani the author point out the word خَالَتَهُ. So خَالَتَهُ, it means something that mix. Something that mix. So now Sheikh Ibn Qasim is pointing out with the words of Sheikh Abu Shuja. Because Sheikh Abu Shuja mentioned, بِشَيْءٍ خَالَتَهُ مِنَ الطَّاهِرَاتِ. He said that water that is musta'mal can also be al-mutaghayyir sifatuhu. When there is خَالَتَهُ بِشَيْءٍ مِنَ الطَّاهِرَاتِ. Yani something that is pure that mixes with water. So he said that this word خَالَتَهُ, he said, there are certain situations that if you mix something with water, it does not make water musta'mal. So it is not necessary that any pure substance that you place inside the water, it makes any the water musta'mal. Because there are certain any situations when you put something that is pure in water, it does not change the status any of the water. So he gave an example. He said, خَالَتَهُ عَنِ الطَّاهِرِ الْمُجَاوِرِ لَهُ. If you add any something that is mujawir. What is any mujawir? Mujawir is like a solid any substance any that does not mix any with water. For example, if I put a pencil, this pencil, and for example, I put any inside any the water. So does this give any effect any to the water? This is a solid. It does not any mix any with water. So we say this is mujawir, this does not give effect any to the water. So this is an example in the author is saying exceptional case. So if I were to put a stick in water, now this is mujawir, and this will not any change any the status any of the water. فَإِنَّهُ بَاقٍ عَلَى طَهُورِيَّتِهِ وَلَوْ كَانَ تَغَيُّرُ كَثِيرًا. Even if the solid thing that I put in the water create changes in the water, so this is forgiven. Why? Because the nature of the thing that is placed in the water is mujawir. It is something that does not mix any with the water. So this kind of changes will not give effect to the water. So a good what do you call it? A good example will be, for example, leaves, branches of the trees, for example, sometimes it mixes with the water. When people put water outdoor, sometimes all these things fall into the water. But since it is a solid thing that does not mix with the water, this is forgiven. This is called mujawir. So mujawir is something that does not mix with the water. Qatinin wa tuhlubin wa ma fi makarihi wa mamarihi. And anything that is, he gave an example, qatin wa tuhlub. Sorry, before that he mentioned وَكَذَا الْمُتَغَيِّرُ بِمُخَالِطٍ لَا يَسْتَغْنِي الْمَاءُ عَنْهُ قَطِينٍ وَطُحْلُبٍ. So before that, there are two things here. Number one, he speaks about mujawir. Number two, he speaks about mukhalit. What is the difference between mujawir and mukhalit? Mujawir is something that does not mix with water. Mukhalit is something that is mixed with water. So now, when we say something that is pure and it does not mix with the water, we say that this does not cause any issue with the water. It does not change the status of the water, even though the water changes with it after some time. But this is forgiven. Why? Because this is mujawir. The nature is that it does not mix with water. As such, we say that this is forgiven. The second situation is mukhalit. Mukhalit is something that mixes with water. And these are examples that we gave before this. I put coffee, I put salt, I put sugar. So what happens? This is mukhalit. It mixes with the water. If it mixes with the water and it causes any changes into the water, then we say this carries the ruling of musta'mal. طاهر في نفسه غير مطهر لغيره. Clear, inshallah? So there is a difference between mujawir and mukhalit. So when it comes into mujawir, it is forgiven. But when it comes into mukhalit, it is not any forgiven. So he said, if it is a mukhalit, there are certain situations that can be forgiven. Now we have to pay attention here. Now the author is saying about mujawir and mukhalit. So the basis of the ruling is that if something is mujawir, it does not make any of the water musta'mal. But if it is mukhalit, generally it makes any of the water any musta'mal. If it changes any of the properties occur. But then he said there are certain any mukhalit that is forgiven. Certain any mukhalit that is forgiven. How we want to know whether a mukhalit is forgiven or not forgiven? So he said this is a kind of mukhalit la yastaghni al-ma'u anhu. La yastaghni al-ma'u anhu. Yani if this form of mukhalit or something that mixes with water is something that the water cannot do without, then it is forgiven. Like what? Katinin wa tahlab. Yani what you call it, this tin, this soil. For example, if a person and he stores any water, and inside any of the water there is soil. Inside any of the water there is soil, and the soil and it mixes any of the water. We say this is forgiven. This is forgiven. Why? Because soil and it has an origin in purity. Because soil we can use tayammum any for purity. So when soil and it mixes any with water, no issue. We can use any of the water even though it mixes any with soil. So this is an exceptional case. And soil is mukhalid. Number two, and it is tahlub. Number two, and it is consider any to be any tahlub. So now tahlub any is basically algae. Algae. So algae, if algae any is on any water or in at the sides any of the vessels, there is after some time when a person installs any water, there will be algae. So in this any situation, then we say it does not affect any of the water. It does not affect the water. Because why? Because this is something that the water cannot do without. Because algae, no matter what any you do, there will be algae. If you are storing any water for a long time, there will be algae. So this is forgiven. وَمَا فِي مَقَارِهِ وَمَمَرِهِ. And anything that is in maqar and mamar. Meaning, maqar is, for example, and if I have a vessel that is made of clay, and if I store any water in the vessel and after some time, it will mix any with the clay. It will mix any with the clay. But here we say it is forgiven. Because why? Because this is maqar. The clay and is part any of the vessel. So if the clay and is part any of the vessel and the water turn out to be clayish, this is forgiven. Because it will be very difficult any for us any to ascertain any that no mixture any of clay happens any to the water. So this is ma fi maqarihi. Number two, yani is mamar. Mamar yani is like any if I built like piping and then of water, and then after some time when I drink any the water or I taste any the water, there is the smell any of pipes. Now this is any forgiven. This is any forgiven. Why? Because this is mamar, the place anywhere the water any flows into. So if there is any changes in the properties any of the water, it is forgiven if it is based any on the pipings. So we have ma fi maqarihi and mamarihi. So whether we speak about mujawi and mukhalid, like the example any of tin and tahlub, all these things it is forgiven. Even though it mixes any with the water, even though it mixes any with the water, in case of maqar and mamar, that's what I mentioned, any clay pots. And likewise, pipings. We smell any of the pipings. Tamam? So all these things any are forgiven. Clear, inshallah? So the author mentioned wal mutarayyiru bi tulil muksi. Tulul muksi any meaning any we store any water any very long. When we store any water any very long and it changes the properties any of water, this is also forgiven. Fa innahu tahurun. The author any mentioned it is still tahur. And again, the meaning of tahur is tahirun fi nafsihi, mutahhirun li ghayrihi. Is there any questions any so far? Everybody? Are you with me? Everything clear, inshallah? MashaAllah. Yeah, it is still considered mutlaq. Even though there is changes in the properties. But these changes, we say, they are forgiven. They are forgiven. So changes that are forgiven still maintains the tahuriyah. It still and it maintains the mutlaq any of the water. Meaning the term any water is not changed any from it. This is how in the fuqaha any use these terms. La yaslabu an tahuriyatihi. Yani it does not remove its tahuriyah. Clear? So this is how we understand the text any of the fuqaha in this regard. Yes. Likewise, in sex we have the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, إِذَا وَقَعَ ذُبَابُ فِي شَرَابِ أَحَدِكُمْ فَلْيَغْمِسْهُ. The Prophet mentioned if there is a fly that falls into sharab, and you are drinking something, for example, a cup any of water, a fly and he falls into it. So the Prophet ﷺ mentioned for yarmishu, yani you submerge it, waliyanza'hu, and then you remove it. So our fuqaha they mention that when you submerge any fly, what happens to the fly? The fly will die. And this shows that the carcass of the fly will not make any of the water filthy. So insects carries the ruling of fly. This is based on qiyas. So any insect that falls into water will not make the water mutanajis. Even though insect is najis, the carcass of insect is najis. For example, a fly, if you pray, for example, if you perform prayers, if there is a dead fly inside your body, inside your clothes, your prayer is not valid. But when it comes into water, it's forgiven. When it comes into water, it's forgiven. So dead any insects, although they are najis, but if they fall into water, it does not contaminate the water. It does not make the water mutanajis. And this is an example of mujawir. This is an example of mujawir, and this is forgiven when it comes into insects. How do we say it is forgiven? Based on the hadith of Zubab. We have the famous hadith of Zubab. Our scholars based on qiyas. So anything that carries the ruling of a fly does not contaminate any water. So this includes cockroach, lizard, bugs, ants. It does not make the water mutanajis. But if a dead rat fell into water, it makes the water mutanajis, because this is not based on qiyas to flies. Because rat is something, it's an animal, that if you cut the body, the blood will flow. So the illah of insects is that anything that if you cut the body, the blood does not flow. This carries the ruling of insects. But when it comes into animals, that the blood flows, like cats, and rats, so it will make the water mutanajis. Now, because it does not carry the ruling of insects. Okay, is there any other question? There is someone type here, one paragraph and you were missing out. فَإِن لَمْ يَمْنَعْ بِطَاهِرٍ يَسِيرًا. This thing I mentioned just now. So let us go back to it. Before that, there's another question. How about the fur of animals? The fur of animals depends on what type of animals. The fur of animals, can we consume the animals or we cannot consume the animals? So for animals that we can consume, the fur is pure. So for example, the fur of goats, sheep, this is pure, no problem. Yani if it falls into water, it does not make the water mutanajis. But the fur of animals that we cannot consume them, for example, cats, dogs, of course, najis mughalladha, that is the worst case. But other animals like tigers, lions, the first is najis. The first of animals that we cannot eat is a filth. So if the fur enters into water, it makes water filthy. It makes water filthy. So if the water is little less than tuqullah, and the first of these animals enters into the water, it makes the water filthy. But here again we speak about mujawir, because fur of animals is mujawir and not mukhalid. So that is why it is important to understand the term mujawir and mukhalid. So if it is mujawir, it does not mixes with the water. But if you were to use the water with the fur in it, then your wudu will not be valid. And if you are taking any wudu, because now there is a mixture of what is pure and what is najis. About the paragraph that is not mentioned, you mentioned that we have not covered it. So let us go back to the text. Where is it? Can somebody read that part? Some more? Yeah, this one I mentioned just now. The thing is like this. The author he mentioned, he said بشيء خالطه من الطاهرات تغيرا يمنع إطلاق اسم الماء عليه فإنه طاهر غير طهور حسيا كان تغيره أو تقديريا. Then he said كأن اختلط بالماء ما يوافقه في صفاته كماء الورد المنقطع الرائحة والماء المستعمل فإن لم يمنع إطلاق اسم الماء عليه. فإن لم يمنع إطلاق اسم الماء عليه. This one, that's why I mentioned I use it in the bottle. I say that if I put in something into this water in this bottle, إن لم يمنع إطلاق اسم الماء عليه. إن لم يمنع إطلاق اسم الماء. What is the meaning? Yani, if I were to put something into this water, and this changes that occurs does not remove the purity, the tuhuriya of this water, in a sense that the changes is very minimal. If the changes is very minimal and the changes is based on something that is pure, and it does not remove the term water from it, it is still mutlaq. This is what the author is saying. Taghayyuran yasiran. If the changes is yasir. Yasir meaning something that is light. For example, if I were to put a bit, a pinch of coffee inside this water, will a pinch, I think it's a lot, maybe just a bit of coffee into this water, and when I look this water, there is no traces of coffee after that. I do a mixture up like this, and I see the water is still like this, but there is coffee inside, correct or not? There is coffee inside, but this is yasir. This is minimal. It does not remove the purity of the water. So the author is saying it is still considered to be tahur. Then he said bi an kana taghayyuhu bi tahir yasiran. Yasir meaning a little. Aw bima yuwafiqul ma'a fi sifatihi, or something that we put and it coincides with the characteristics of the water in terms of the color, taste and smell. This is an example of rose water that has no smell, no color, no taste. We say yuwafiquhu fi sifat, meaning when you look at this rose water, it is like water, yuwafiqani fi sifat, but it is not any water. If I were to put any in water, then I have to use an estimation. This is taqdir. So the author again is speaking about whether it is based on hissi or taqdir, whether it is based on physical change or it is based on estimated change. Clear, inshallah? So this is where the author mentioned after that وَقُدِّرَ مُخَالِفًا وَلَمْ يُغَيِّرْهُ. This is taqdir, mukhalifan meaning if, because since I'm putting any rose water that has no color, no taste, no smell, then I have to do an estimation that is mukhalif to the sifat. Mukhalif meaning if I were to estimate that this is frankincense, the smell of frankincense, or the taste of vinegar, if I were to assume that what has been put in is vinegar, will this water be changed? We say this is mukhalifan li sifat. So I use vinegar and frankincense and luban as my medium of estimation, and I assume that if this is mixed, will it remove the tahuriya of the water? Okay, this okay, is there any other questions? No questions? I hope everything is clear, inshallah. I covered, I think, all of it. Then Allah he said, فَلَا يُسْلَبْ طُهُرِيَّتُهُ فَهُوَ مُطَهِّرٌ لِغَيْرِهِ مُطَهِّرٌ لِغَيْرِهِ يعني طاهر في نفسه مطهر لغيره. So I hope when you are at your class any later, please any take your attendance the rep any or whoever any wants any to volunteer any take any the attendance file. Please any mark any your attendance, huh? Okay. So if there is no other questions, any we will stop here. Jazakallah khair. Sallallahu ala sayyidina Muhammadin wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam walhamdulillahi rabbil alamin.